What up, YouTube? This is Strident. Today I'm coming to you with a little geeked out opinion segment. Many of us that are in our, I want to say, mid-20s, early 30s, grew up with toy lines like Masters of the Universe. That was one of a whole bunch of 80s toy lines that had cartoons to accompany them that act as, or served as a commercial pretty much to get all of us kids to bug our parents to buy these toys. Now, some of them were better than others. Masters of the Universe was one of the more popular ones. I wasn't a huge fan growing up, but I was a fan. I wanted a He-Man toy just like everybody else. Wanted a Skeletor. Thought the idea of these barbarians with powers and stuff was really cool because I, unlike many of my friends, I was one of the kids who was actually allowed to watch Conan because my dad allowed me to watch Conan. So even though I was a little traumatized, Conan was, I think, the second movie I saw growing up as a kid. Anyway, the Masters of the Universe line, for those of you who don't know, it pretty much was a line of barbarians, like I said, with powers, and they were on a fictional planet called Eternia, and the idea was for little boys to have like a overly heroic character that you could pretty much put in any situation, and the characters were supposed to be so powerful, I mean, hence Masters of the Universe, so powerful that you could just pull off whatever you want to pull off with them. And it was kind of cool. Growing up, you don't notice how generic these things are, but then you get older, you go back and you look at it and you're like, wow, huh. So in the years after the original Masters of the Universe in the 80s, various things happened. The first one failed because the cartoon was lame. Plain and simple. I'm not even going to try and sugarcoat it. I'm going to tell it to you exactly how it was. The cartoon was fucking lame. Every episode, you have these huge barbarians talking about nothing, running around with swords and guns, poorly drawn action, poorly animated action, etc., etc. It failed, and then shortly after the series went off, the toys stopped being sold. In the 90s, they tried a reboot where they reimagined just He-Man and Skeletor, and then I think there was like a handful of other characters. It was called The New Adventures of He-Man. The idea there was that you drop He-Man on this planet, Primus, in this other world, because he was needed, and then we have to watch him deal with stuff that's completely not what we grew up dealing with. And, on some levels, it was cool. The intro was really well animated, but his design just wasn't He-Man. I mean, granted, the Ubermensch thing was there. And I know a lot of people are going to be like, Ubermensch? Yeah, blonde hair, blue eyes, whatever you want to call it. Ultra powerful character. He still was the same type of look, but he was skinnier. He kind of looked like Ken from Barbie with a ponytail. We didn't like that, so that failed. And the toys were not that good. Failed. Of course, this was tied. Both of these shows, all these shows had the female counterpart, which was She-Ra. And She-Ra kind of had the same fate as the first He-Man series. But anyway, fast forward to 2001, I think it is. Mattel hires the Four Horsemen to revamp the whole line, redesign all the characters. And then they hire Mike Young Productions to do the cartoon. Now, for once, this was a choice that made all the sense in the world, and when you see the end result, it's like, wow, finally, we're actually getting some action. We're getting, I don't know, a serious, action-based cartoon with these characters that look like they can do some damage. And not only was that in the cartoon, the figures that the Four Horsemen came up with, they were amazing. I mean, the problem with the figures, and this is probably the only problem to me, is that they have that action pose design thing, where the characters were sculpted in an action pose. That's frequently the kiss of death when it comes to action figures, because the whole point, and I guess a lot of companies learn this later on, the whole point of action figures, and we can use G.I. Joe as an example, is you supply the action, the company supplies the figure. You're supposed to have your imagination, and that's supposed to be what powers your figure. it shouldn't be that the figure is anchored by an action, one action. It limits what you can do with your figure, you know, and it limits your usage of your imagination. This is why another reason why these toy lines didn't do as well as they could have back in the day. There were a lot of gimmicks. There were a lot of cheap reused molds and things like that. A lot of stuff that we've seen, you know, collectors see it now and we're like, yeah, no, fuck that. So anyway, the point of this whole thing is the Mike Young Productions revamp was superior on every level, and still you had purists that complained, He-Man's haircut is wrong. I'm like, wow, seriously? You really think that the Squire haircut looks better? Or the fact that Prince Adam is exactly the same size as He-Man, except he takes off all his clothes and puts on, you know, the hairy underwear and the straps, and now he's a different character? Seriously? You know, people bitch about Superman's glasses and they turn around and they buy that shit. So anyway, you've got these fans that are saying that even though the Mike Young Productions version and the Four Horsemen versions are better, that they're not necessarily better, if that makes sense. Visually, you can see that the update makes more sense, but they still say that they're using their nostalgia as the anchor to keep them, you know, stuck on those old designs. Now, I think personally, as an artist and a character designer, that's my specialty, is character design. You can't tell me that nostalgia alone can dictate a better design. It's bullshit, because poor design is poor design. Now, there are aspects of the designs that are timeless, which is why it was easy for certain characters to be updated, and I'm going to show you this as we, you know, move on in this. But there are some things that when you look at it, it's like it doesn't convey the message that was supposed to come across. Yes, muscles convey power to some degree, but if that's where it begins and ends, then you failed, and you need little things, more details to help bring that all together. Now, after the 2001 line took off, there were distribution issues. There were collectors snatching up all the figures because they would all go to one area and not to other areas. There were all kinds of things that kind of killed this, and Mattel, they needed to get their shit straight with their distribution. It was kind of like the early days of the DC Universe Classics and the DC Superheroes line from them. But anyway, come what was it, like 2008 or 2009, they came up with a new line. It was called Masters of the Universe Classics. Much like the DC Universe Classics, except what they did was they jumped back on the old school molds and then added articulation. So you get these huge buff figures, and they're all designed like the original He-Man figures, which to me was like, why did you go back? You know, yes, some of us wanted an original He-Man and an original Skeletor so we can have them looking like the cartoon accurate and have them up, you know, on our mantle doing a cool action pose or something. But we wanted, realistically, the 2001 designs, the Mike Young Productions and the Four Horsemen designs, those were superior. And then in this line, the Masters of the Universe Classics, there are a couple of the Masters of the Universe 2001 characters showing up from the Four Horsemen, because the Four Horsemen continue doing the line. They're the sculptors for this line all the way through. I think some of them worked on the original He-Man figures, so it's kind of cool. They're fans and they're putting the love into it. But the thing that I don't like is that the fans are just shitting on it. And it's kind of like what you have in the video game industry, where fans become elitist about one thing and they refuse to use their common sense when it moves on to other things. So you have fans bitching about which characters should be included in the classics line. To me, if you're not Mattel, they're only going to listen to what you have to say so much. Yes, there are websites like MattyCollector.com and He-Man.org and DCUniverseClassics.com that like have forums where we can voice our opinions, but a lot of us don't care. We just want to see our figure. When it comes out, we buy it and we're done. You always have the choice to buy what you want to buy. That's the beauty of consumerism, I guess, you know. They give you the product, You are the consumer. If you like it, you buy it. If you don't, you don't buy it. But people are bitching as to which figures should be considered part of the canon and blah, 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 and part of this universe and that universe. If you don't like it, don't buy it. Plain and simple. Stop bitching, you know? But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over a couple of the more recognizable designs like He-Man and Skeletor, and I'm going to show you the originals, the 2001 designs, and then I'm going to show you the classics designs, and you can decide for yourself what you think about them. Okay, so first we have the classics version of He-Man, and then the classic version, the original He-Man toy. I mean, there's not much to say. It's pretty much the design you saw in the cartoon. The problem was the original had strange proportions. It got the job done for us as children, but you know, you get older and it's kind of like, I wish that it wasn't so stubby. I mean, even my son, when I showed him these figures, because, you know, he's 9, and I use him as the frame of reference for a lot of designs when I'm drawing characters, and for, you know, when we go to the comic book store together, we're looking at stuff, and, you know, I listen to what he has to say, because, I mean, he's 9. He's kind of freshly being introduced to this stuff that I was introduced before I was 9. So he looked at him and he goes, why are his arms and legs about the same size? And I said, I don't know. That's just the way they decided to design it. And he was laughing. Then he saw the taller version, the classics version, which I bought in the 2-pack with Superman versus He-Man. And he goes, oh, that's how he's supposed to look. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of how he's supposed to look. The colors are off from the cartoon, but, you know, overall, this is what he should look like. I mean, it's your standard He-Man. The classics version is an improvement. He doesn't look as fruity as the original. The original one looks like some type of fruity troll. Something's wrong with them. But I mean, it was an awesome figure back in the time. I mean, I know how people had fun with them. I saw my friends playing with them, and, you know, design-wise, he's a barbarian. It's very simple. You get it first glance. There's not much else to worry about. I had issues with him holding his weapons back in the day because, you know, they weren't built the right way for them to hold all their weapons properly, and I used to make them hit each other, you know? So then comes the 2001 version. You can't possibly tell me that this is a mock-up, a Photoshop mock-up that I got off of He-Man.org forums. You can't tell me that this design is not superior in every single freaking way to the previous designs I just showed you. The face looks serious. The hair looks more like something someone who doesn't keep their hair would have. You know, it's not all fluffy and weird looking. I mean, granted, he's supposed to be royalty, but he's supposed to look like a noble barbarian. And this is exactly what you got. Granted, a lot of people didn't like the sword. The sword is a little busy. And that's probably the one thing I could say that I'm not a huge fan of, but the shape and design of the sword is fucking awesome. And I don't understand. I mean, when we play RPGs and you look at the design of the most savage characters, typically there's design elements that show that this character has more to him than just that savage edge. He-Man's not a savage, but he is a barbarian because that's what that planet is like. So on the surface you have a barbarian, but then if you pay attention to all these details like the gauntlets and the shiny silver parts, it's like nobility. Even the crest, or the fact that he's not very scarred, so it means he's a skilled fighter, obviously. The size of his freaking muscles, I mean, dude is huge, and it works, you know? I'm gonna throw in a picture of the actual 2001 figure. So now you have the 2001 He-Man. Now, I don't know if people have issues seeing or something. I mean, I don't know what it is that's missing that they're having problems with, but this is the actual figure. What I showed you before was a custom Masters of the Universe Classic Photoshop manipulation where they put these details on that figure. I think they took the majority of those parts from a photograph of the 2001 He-Man statue. Anyway, I mean, what more can you say? Granted, his face is a little bit younger. His build is a little bit more cartoony with the... Actually, I wouldn't even say more cartoony. It's more modern because a lot of modern bodybuilders have the smaller waist and broader shoulders. All it is they work their backs more. There's nothing much more to say. It's a superior design to that 80s poor man's barbarian. Man in arms. This is the classics version, which is pretty much the original one standing up straight. I mean, he never had a bad design. The only thing I didn't like was his face in the cartoon, or I'm sorry, in the box art where he didn't have the beard or the mustache. Sorry. I love the colors. I love the fact he has the one big old leg or big armor piece on one leg and big armored arm, but you never knew what that was. Fast forward to 2001. Look at that. He looks ready to do some serious damn damage. I mean, look at his whole, the whole suit, the green undersuit. It's armor. I mean, like, I don't understand how people didn't see this and that big ass shoulder pad. Holy shit. What the, like, you could clearly see that instead of carrying a shield, he could use that to rush in and dodge and block, and people complained. I don't understand it. Here's a custom of the same figure standing up with wear and tear painted into his armor and everything. Granted, they made his armor more gold and less orange. Still, the design is completely superior to the original one, and people complain. The fans said, no, we want the original corny ass, fruity, homosexual overtone having, you know, Masters of the Universe version. You know, and I'm not saying like it's completely wrong to like it, but I'm saying, you know, acknowledge the fact that professionals came in and fixed and updated and not even updated, they fully realized the design instead of having a knockoff with parts of the original thing intact. I mean, look at this Skeletor. This is the 2001 version of Skeletor. That is fucking scary. That's what a villain should look like. Look at how emaciated his body is in comparison to the other ones. Now here's the classics version. I mean, this looks like the Fisher-Price version of what I just showed you. So, you know, like, clearly there's a fine line between just pure insanity, people calling insanity nostalgia, and, like, actually acknowledging a superior design. You know, it doesn't make sense to me. So, you know, I want to understand, you know, for me, I say the 2001 line, the designs were 100% superior. I don't have the nostalgia vested in this like other people do. I mean, there's aspects of it, but there's not a single episode from that original He-Man series that stuck in my mind to make me say, I want, you know, I would love to see a redone version of blah, blah, blah. Nothing. And I watched He-Man, I watched She-Ra, and none of it stood out for me. When I turned around and watched the 2001 version, there were so many episodes that stood out. I mean, there's an episode, I think it was the end of the first series, right before the Snake Men thing happened, where He-Man takes on the entire, Skeletor and his evil horde, I think that's what they called them in that show. He took on everybody, including 3 giants that showed up in the, in an earlier episode, and it was epic. They even made, the music was a parody of the Burly Brawl from Matrix. They even had the Matrix horns during one of the fights. And when you see the stuff he was doing, it was like, whew. The music actually was a parody between, Furious Angels and the Burly Brawl. I mean, if that's not awesome, I don't know what is, just musically speaking, because usually music in cartoons is not that great, barring Justice League and anything by the DC Animated Universe. That series was amazing, and the figures were designed extremely well, even if they were designed in a pose. The Masters of the Universe Classics, they're kind of specifically made for a specific demographic, and I think there are a lot of us out there that we remember He-Man, but we didn't really need you to go back and give us this. But what I would like to see, and I hope this is what Mattel is doing, because I'm not really paying super hardcore attention to that line like I do with the DC Universe Classics, but I hope that the classics refer to the style of the figure and we get classics from the 2000X line, because I already saw a 2000X, or they've already done a 2000X version of Zodak, as well as the classic version of Zodak. So, you know, characters like that I want to see more of. So anyway, this has been just one of those times where I'm throwing my random thoughts out there. I want to see, you know, if anyone else feels me or if anyone else is even interested. Because I know there's tons of collectors, because I can't find the figures that I want to find because you guys buy them up. And I mean, I got other things going on, so I'm not really like super hardcore about this line. But you know, I did want Zodak. Thanks. I don't want to spend $80 for him or $50 for him, you know. I wasn't that hardcore into him. I just like the design. So, you know, I know that you guys are out there, and I know you guys come across this stuff. Tell me what you think, you know. Let me know if you know something I don't that, you know, explains to me what the controversy is over, you know, this. Let's shit on 2001's designs and say that the classic ones were better when clearly they're not, you know? So anyway, get at me, all right? You guys have a good one. Check me out, as always, at www.lordnephilim.deviantart.com. All right, guys? Peace.